Hi everybody, I am going to run through Lab 1. I'm going to do this in the new installation of or the new clone of the GitHub repository that I created in the Lab 0 video. So I'm starting with the same thing that you would start with if you did Lab 0 installation today. Um, I'm going to come to Canvas in the modules, in the lab modules. Um, these are the instructions. I'm going to open this and I'm going to read from here. No, I'm not. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to read. Yeah, I'll read from here and just flip back and forth. So we're going to start in this lab. We're going to create some data. We're going to organize it. We're going to run a couple of basic functions on it. Um, and we're going to end up making a nice little table of the data. We're going to find the means and medians, and we're going to save it so that we can use it for lab 2. So I'm going to start by um, I'm actually going to start by opening a script in RStudio to work in. So the first thing I'm going to do is come here to the File menu, and I'm going to click File, New, and RScript. And remember, if you have a Mac, you have to push your mouse cursor up to the top of the screen to get this menu to show up. So I've created this script. I'm going to save it. And I've created a folder called Tom's Labs to keep the work that I do. I have a copy of the actual work where I've done it and tested it in labs, but that's the one that downloads. This is a separate copy where I'm doing the work with you and saving it. So you should do the same thing. Create a folder with whatever name you want to give it and keep your work in that. Um, the And you can do that by clicking create new folder, and you can name it whatever you want. And then the folder, whatever you want, pops up down there. Okay, so now I want to save this. It's just a good habit to get in. I want to save this. Um, the first time you save something, you'll start up in this folder or directory, and so I want to save it in this folder, and I want to name this lab 1. I don't want to name it lab1.r. It will fill in the .r for me. So now I'm ready to actually start doing what's instructed here. So first, we're going to add some data to create 2 vectors, and we're going to use something called the C function. A vector is defined as a basic one-dimensional data structure that holds an ordered collection of elements, all of the same type. That's the definition for R. It has a slightly different definition in statistics, and it has a much different definition in physics. I was terribly confused the first time that R told me I'd done something wrong with a vector, and I didn't know it was even called that. Because in physics, a vector is something that has velocity and direction. So in a way, this has velocity and direction. It's got multiple things. They're in order, and that's important. They're in order. Whatever order you put them in, they're going to stay in. So you can put all of your x's in one order, and then you put the corresponding y's in the same order in a second vector, and they'll be lined up when you do something with them. So we're going to create this vector, and our first one is just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we use this C function with parentheses to do that. So we're doing several things here on this line of code. The first thing is this global environment is empty. There's nothing out here. By typing this, along with the rest of the stuff that I'm going to type, I'm creating something called an object. This object is also a vector. Um, an object is anything that's out here in the environment that we create in the memory of R that R can perform functions on. So, uh, so this object is going to be named first vector, and I am going to assign a value to it with something called the assignment operator. The assignment operator is nothing more than the left arrow on your keyboard, the one that is shift comma uh, on most keyboards. So you do that, and then a hyphen, a single hyphen, no space between them. Just they're combined into one thing. Um, this is, and then I'm going to use this C function that just tells R that it's combining everything that's in the parentheses. And so I'm going to create this C function with parentheses, and R functions always have an open parentheses and a closed parentheses, and then stuff inside them. And in this case, the stuff inside is just going to be the numbers that I want to go into this vector, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I run that, which I can do by highlighting and then clicking run, and if you have your screen squished way down, you're not going to see that run. So if you're working with like the instructions on one half of the screen and RStudio on the other half, you're not going to see that. That's one of the reasons that I'm flipping back and forth instead of having them side by side. It's a little more trouble to flip back and forth, but boy, it sure makes it easier to find things. So I highlight first vector and hit run. I highlight that line of code, and it created that object out here that's named first vector. Uh, it's numeric. So we said that, or I said that it's a one-dimensional data structure that holds an order collection of elements, all of the same type, all numeric, all character, all logical. This one is numeric. Why? Because it's a bunch of numbers. Then it's got 1:5. That tells us that it's a sequence. Well, it's not a sequence, but it's a set of 5 numbers. It's a set of 5. So this is telling us how many are in it. And then out here, it actually shows what's in it. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be much longer, and if it was much longer, then we'd see like dot dot dot. Now I'm going to create my second vector, and I'm going to do it, and that's what I'm naming it. So to be clear, this name, first vector, second vector, those are just names that I picked. Those are not commands. You could name it something else. If you do, you have to be consistent. So if you wanted to name it Bob's vector and Bob's second vector, that's fine, but you have to use the same name later in the code. So that's not a command. That's not anything unique to R. That's just something I picked. The assignment operator is part of R. It's very important. I'm sure at this point you've heard me say it several times in class. I'm going to keep saying it. It's like one of the things about R code that's absolutely going to be testable. So then this C function is also pretty important. And so we've got this C function with the parentheses, and in this vector, predictably, I'm just going to make this one 6. Maybe if I can type 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you've got to be careful not to make typos, because if you make typos, nothing is going to work afterwards. So there's second vector. I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to put in a comment just so we have it there. just telling what I just did. Um, so the next thing I want to do is print these vectors. This isn't going to be very impressive. It's not a huge deal. But if we want to print these vectors, and by print, I don't mean send it to a printer, but I mean send it down here to the console. Um, all I have to do is type the name of the object and hit run. Um, if I do it in a script, I have to type it, select it, and hit run. Um, and you see first vector ran down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Second vector, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The There is a print command. We used it in Lab 0. You don't have to use it to print objects if all you're doing is just printing a single object. Um, So the next thing I want to do is combine these two vectors into a matrix. And a matrix is a two-dimensional data structure. It's a rectangle. If you think about a spreadsheet or a table with rows and columns, that's a matrix. So a vector is just a one-dimensional list of numbers or letters or whatever. Matrix is two-dimensional. It's putting it together into a table. And both of these have to have all of the same type of data. We're going to get to things that can work with multiple types of data later, but for now we've got these. And before I do that, well, let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to create combined matrix. So the first thing I'm going to do is create something, and I'm going to name it combined matrix. Just like with the names of first vector and second vector, this is just a convenient name. This is just supposed to mean that I can come back to and say, oh, it's a combined matrix. It's a matrix I made by combining these two things. And how do I combine? Well, I'm going to use this function from R called rbind. Rbind just stands for row bind. So I'm going to combine this so that the first vector is one row, the second vector is the second row. And I do that by using rbind first vector, second vector. If all that worked right, so I'm going to run that, make sure it worked. So you can come over here, you can see it created an object called combined matrix. It's numeric. It's got 2 rows and 5 columns. And the numbers are 1, 6, 2, 7, 3, 8, 4, 9, 5, 10 because it's showing row 1, row 2. So it's showing the first value from row 1, the first value from row 2, the second value from row 1, the second value from row 2, the third, the fourth, and then the fifth. So that appears to have worked the way I wanted it to from that, but I can print it to make sure. And when I print it, it prints this little table. And so first vector is row 1, second vector is row 2, and then it gave column names, but they're not really names, they're numbers, and they're kind of odd numbers. They say comma 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. The reason for that is that column is the second number, row is the first. So first vector, comma 1 is this location. Second vector, comma 3 is the 8. Or this would be 2, comma 3. 1, comma 5 would be the first row, the fifth column. And so that's why they're comma and then the number. Um, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely create actually not an error, but a warning. I'm going to purposely create a warning so that you can see one way that R handles things that are not right. And the way I'm going to create a warning is that I'm going to create this thing called third vector, and there's the assignment operator. That's all good so far, but these are length 5. I am going to create a vector that only has 3 things in it. And when I do that, you think about we're trying to make a table, right? So when you think about trying to make a table where it's going to have 3 rows and 5 columns, but this only has 3 things in it. So I am going to attempt to combine the two, to combine them into a matrix. And I'm going to call it combined matrix 2. I'm going to come back over and make sure that's what I put here to make sure I'm not confusing you. Yeah, so I'm going to call it combined matrix 2, and I'm going to use the rbind command again. Since I already made the combined matrix to start with, I can use that as the first thing, and then I can use third vector as the second thing. I could also go through and type first vector, comma, second vector, comma, third vector, but since I already created this and I just want to add one more row, I can do this. When I click run on that, it gives me a warning number, a warning. And it doesn't give me an error, but it gives me a warning. And so warnings are things that you need to pay attention to. You need to say, is that important or not? And a lot of the warnings won't be important. Like they'll be perfectly fine. And this one might be perfectly fine if you wanted to get this result, 11, 12, 13, 11, 12. But if you just left out 2 numbers, or maybe it should have been that you didn't have numbers, so it should have been NA and NA, except that that's not going to work because NA won't work in a matrix because that's not the same data type. But it's if there should have been something there and there wasn't, see if I can get, yeah, I can't do that. So if there should have been something there, if it was just that you forgot to type in the last 2 numbers, it's important. It gave you a warning that said, it said it's a different length. And so it goes 11, 12, 13, and then starts back over at 11. If that's not what you wanted it to do, you need to know that. So to fix this, I'm going to fix it by creating a totally new 4th vector. I could fix it by going back and putting more numbers in the 3rd vector, but I'm just going to create a different one. And I'm going to put 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And I'm putting a comment. You can put a comment on the same line as a command. Anything after that hashtag is just a comment. So I create the 4th vector. I can look out here. It's numeric. It has 1 to 5. It matches the 1st and the 4th, or the 1st and the 2nd, which means it also matches the combined matrix. So I'm going to create one called combined matrix 3. I'm going to create it by using that same rbind command or function. And what I'm going to rbind is that first combined matrix, the one that I created up here, right, that has the first vector and second vector, and then the fourth vector. So those are the things I'm combining. This should work just fine, and it does. And then I want to print it, so I just type the name of it, and I will print it, and I will see a nice little table of values with 3 rows. So now I've got 3 rows, 5 columns. So one issue that can happen is you make a typo. So I'm going to clear everything out. And I'm going to rerun all of this. So I've got my first vector and my second vector. But then I make a typo in combined matrix. I left the R out. And now I try to run everything. And I get an error, second vector not found. And then nothing after that runs. Or I make the typo in combined matrix and it says combined matrix not found. Why? Because I named it matix. What if I just what if you're just following along in a lab and I'm doing it live rather than recorded, so you can't press pause and you just miss typing a line entirely? Well, something similar is going to happen. You're going to get combined matrix not found. Why? Because it's left out. The you know so one thing is you've got to be in order, and you have to type everything right. This is just really important. Got to go in order, got to type everything right. Can't leave anything out. If you do, it's not going to be out here, and R's not going to find it. Or if you type it wrong, it's going to, if I type it wrong either place and they don't match, then it's not going to match. It's not going to be able to figure it out. It trusts that you typed what you wanted to type. So I'm going to go on to the next thing now, which is turning this matrix into something called a data frame. A data frame is one of the most basic things we work with in R. And the reason I want to turn it into a data frame is because I told you a vector can only have one type of data, a matrix can only have one type of data. A data frame can have more than one type of data. So far, all we have are numbers, but once it's a data frame, we can add things to it like letters or logical vectors. So logical is a yes, no, true, false type thing. So we can add those different things to it. So I'm going to create this two-dimensional table. It's not going to look a lot different, but it's able to take different types of data. And so I'm going to name it my data. You don't have to name it my data. My data is just a fairly intuitive name that I gave it. I use a function called data frame. It's data dot frame, but data frame, fairly intuitive there, that if you want to make a data frame, turn something into a data frame, that's what you use. And what do I want to turn into a data frame? I want to turn combined matrix 3 into a data frame named my data. Now I'm going to type my data. So my data is over here, and it shows up differently. It doesn't show up as numeric because even though it is, it could have other types. It doesn't have the rows and columns. It tells me that it has 3 observations of 5 variables. And it doesn't tell me what's in it. But I can print it like this, and it will print to the screen. I can also use a command called view, which view has a capital V, so I can view my data, and if I do that, it pops up over here. It's going to create this little thing in this same area as the script itself. Um, so you'll notice it named my columns x1, x2, x3, x4, x5 because it's 3 observations of 5 variables. Well, next thing I'm going to do is I want to save this to the drive to use later. And so I'm going to use a function called write CSV. And the first argument in the function is going to be what I want to save, which is my data. The second argument in the function is going to be where I want to save it. And so I'm going to save it. I want to save it to the data directory or folder. So to do that, I type data and a slash. And if I do that, it will save it here. And then I want to save it as mydata.csv. And you can see here that I've already done that before. And I want the row names to be saved. I want to have the first vector, second vector, fourth vector. So I set row names equal to true. So one of the words I just said was that the arguments for the function. So arguments are the things in the parentheses. In this case, the first argument is my data. It's the thing I want to save. The second argument is file equals, which is where I want to save it to. And the third argument is row names equals true, which is I want to save the row names. That is the specific arguments for any function depend on the function. They're different for every function. And if you want to find out what they are, you can use the help function, which is just a question mark. You type a question mark and the name of the function, and you'll get a nice little screen that tells you out here a lot about using a particular function. So we don't need that for right now, but it's useful to know. So now that we've got this basic data, so we've got this data in this data frame, hopefully I want to, all right, well, all right, I'm going to open that in a different window because it's not cooperating with me. Give me just a second to open the okay. Okay, so our next step, we're ready to do some operations. So I want to find the mean of the first vector. And I don't just want to find it, I actually want to save it so I can do other things with it later. And there are a couple of ways I can find it. So I'm gonna save the mean of the first vector to an object named mean first vector. And the reason I want to do that is so that I can come back later to do other things. And so there are a couple of ways I can do this. One is I can use this math function sum, and it sums up the first vector. And all that does, so it just takes the numbers that are in it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And it just 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. It sums them. The second thing and then I use the slash, which is just, that's division. That's the division symbol. It's just the mathematical division symbol. And then I could come up here and say, well, how many things are in it? And I could type 5. But there's also a function I can use that finds the length. That is, how many things are in that vector? How long is it? It's 5 observations long. And so this length function will put the number 5 in there. So this will put in 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, which is whatever that is. And then 15, and then this will fill in 5, and then what we'll end up with is the mean, which is 15 divided by 5, which is 3. So I run it, it created mean of the first vector, and you can see the number 3 is in it. There's nothing in that except the number 3. That's called a scalar. A scalar is a single dimension object. It has one number in it. A vector is, well, actually, I guess it's a zero dimension object. A vector is a one-dimensional object because it has several, and a matrix is two-dimensional. There's something beyond a matrix called an array. An array is n-dimensional. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's as many dimensions as you need. So we're not going to do a lot with arrays and matrices in this class, but it's good to know what those words mean. Um, because sometimes your error messages will tell you things like there's a problem with the matrix or there's a problem with the array. And a problem with the matrix doesn't mean that you need to call Neo and decide which pill to take, red or blue. It means there's a problem with the matrix. Um, there's another way to do this, which is there is a built-in function. And we use this in Lab 0. And so I want to do this the way I did it here so that it's the same. Yeah, so I'm going to name this mean first vector 2, just to separate it from the first way I did it, just so that we have it. And then after I create it, we will look at it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight just this line and run it so we can see what happened. So it's over here. I'm going to expand this so you can see. There's the first one I created. There's the second one. And I can print it that way. Of course, this is very complicated to do something you might have been able to do in your head and almost certainly could have done on paper in just a few seconds. But the point is, it's saved out here now, and we can perform other operations on it. So the next thing we're going to do is do the same thing. We're going to find the median of the second vector and save it to an object. And the object we're going to name is going to be median second vector. And we're going to name it median second vector. And of course, how are we going to get that? Well, R gives us a nice function named median. So we do that. It's out there. Median of the second vector is 8. And we can print that to the console with median second vector. Uh-oh, I did something wrong. What did I do? I called it median second vector. It is not median second vector. So you have to be careful. Wow, I made more than one mistake. Oh, I capitalized. Boy, that one was hard to find. Now it's right. So I hit shift to do the underscore. I didn't let go quick enough, and that V was capitalized, so it wouldn't work. So typos happen. Um, all right. So now we're going to move on. I want to create a table. I want to create a table that shows the means and medians of of each row in the data table. So to start with, I need to get the means of the means of the rows. So I'm going to create an object just called means, and I'm going to use another function. We've got another function called apply. And if we want to find out how the apply function works, we can pull this up and it'll show us what the arguments have to be. The first argument has to be an array, which is an n-dimensional object, including a matrix, and ours is a matrix. It says X. X just means the name of whatever we're going to use. We're going to use my data because it will also work on a data frame. Um, and then the second thing we have to do is the margin. The margin tells it whether um, it's the rows or columns. And so in this case, I want the means of the rows. So I'm going to say 1 because that means row. And then the third thing we have to put is the function to be applied. And the function is mean. So this is going to give me, it's going to create the means. It's going to create a new little matrix actually of the means of each row. The second thing I want to do is do the medians of each row. And so I'm going to do the same thing. Everything is going to be the same except the function. The function is going to be median. And I'm going to run that. And then I'm going to print it so I can see it. There it is. So there are the medians. Means and medians on these are the same because they're symmetrical. And now I'm going to create something that's going to have those. So I'm going to create a new data frame and I'm going to name it stats table because it's just a table of the statistics. And I'm going to use that data frame command again. And I'm going to, in the data frame, I'm going to, so before I created a matrix first and then turned the matrix into a data frame, I'm skipping a step here. And it's okay. I'm going straight to making a data frame. And now if I look at that data frame, I've got the means and medians of the first, second, and third vector. So this is all fine. This is all pretty cool. So I showed you the help function. I talked a little bit about an argument earlier. So the arguments are the things inside the parentheses. The first argument here was the thing we wanted to operate on, an array or a matrix. An array. And a matrix is a two-dimensional array. Actually, a vector is a one-dimensional array, and a scalar is a zero-dimensional array, because an array is actually n n dimensions where n is a variable. N can be any number. So n can be 0 to millions and millions and millions or billions. Very hard to wrap your head around anything more than a three-dimensional array, but they exist. Um, so an argument is the thing between the commas. It's the object we're operating on. It's the row or columns, which is called the margin. It's the function we want to use. Um, in the in the data frame function, lots of arguments. The dot 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 is the things we're combining. But then we've got row names, check rows, check names, fix empty names. So I used row names. Uh, well, I did not use row names. That was for saving. But there are lots of things we can do, and there's a description, and it takes some getting used to reading these descriptions. But still, that help documentation is there, and it's very useful and quite easy to get to. Just a question mark. So one of the other things is we can use apply over just a vector. Uh, it's easier. It's easier to just find the mean because all we're really doing here is finding the mean of the first vector, and using apply is a really cumbersome way to do something that is done much easier. But we can still do it just as an exercise in understanding how that function works. Um, yeah, I did that wrong. So we'll try it this way. There we go. Okay. Well, maybe we can't. Uh, okay. I did not type everything I needed to, so in order to use it with a vector, we first have to turn the vector into a matrix. It already is a matrix, but the issue is it's a matrix with only one row. So we have to tell R that. Then we can do it, hopefully. Okay. So that's a very complicated way of doing that, but of doing something that we can do by just typing mean versus vector. Um, but the point is, I've stacked actually three functions here: the mean function, the matrix function, and the apply function. So I'm using three different functions in the same line of code. I'm getting the same result as this. But there are going to be times when stacking three functions into the same line of code may actually be useful. Um, so what if we wanted to find the means of the columns, which is actually a lot more common? Um, we can do apply my data, and we use a margin of 2. Margin of 2 means columns instead of rows. Margin of 1 is rows, margin of 2 is columns. because it goes back to that um, first number before the number before the comma is rows, the number after the comma is columns. Um, so I did that, and now we have the average of x1, x2, x3, x4, x5. Um, that's fine if the first vector is our first observation, second vector is our second observation, and fourth vector is our third observation. But that's not usually how things happen. Usually those vectors are variables, not observations. And so that's kind of weird. So what if the vectors are actually the variables? Well, we have another option, and so that is uh, I can combine a matrix. I can create a different combined matrix where they are columns. And so I'm going to name it. So this is just my name, combined matrix columns. And instead of the R bind, which is row bind, I'm going to use C bind, which is column bind. And I'm going to otherwise do things the same. I'm going to column bind the first vector, second vector, and remember the third vector was a mess, so we're using the fourth vector. Um, so now I've combined the matrix in columns, and now I want to see it to make sure it worked the way I wanted. And it did. So now the vectors are the variable names are first vector, second vector, fourth vector. I could have named them a variable name like democracy, uh, democracy score, uh, gross domestic product, population. But I've named them first vector, second vector, fourth vector. And then over here, the first row is 1, comma, 2, comma, 3, comma, 4, comma, 5, comma. So rows go in front of the commas. So I've done that. Um, Now I want to turn that into a data frame. And so I'm going to name this my data columns to distinguish it from the my data that I created before. And I'm going to use the data frame function again. And I'm going to turn combined matrix columns into my data columns. Um, Not much unusual here. It changed a little bit. We got rid of the commas and brackets, and now the row names are just numbers. Some of the things we can do later are giving row names, changing the column names to actually be like meaningful variable names. Lots of things we can do like that, and we'll do those in the next couple of labs. Um, what I want to do now is use apply to find those means and medians for this, um, just like I did for the others, to create that little stats table thing. So I'm going to apply um, I'm going to apply in order to find the means of the columns. So I want to find the means of, and so this is going to find essentially the means of those vectors. And so it found the means of the vectors. Now I want to do the same thing with the medians because I want to eventually combine this into a combined table again, and then we'll end up saving this. So I do the same thing, set 2, but I use the median function, and I'm going to run that. And because the medians and means are the same for these very simple numbers I used, it works out that way. Um, so the last thing I want to do is save the my data columns frame. And I want to save it. I want to save my data columns. I'm going to save it to a file in the data directory named mydatacolumns.csv. And I don't want the row names because the row names for this are just numbers. And so I don't want those. So I'm going to So I put data slash will get me into this folder or directory. And then I give it the name I want it to have, which is my data columns dot CSV. So I'm saving it to a CSV file. I do not want row names, so I'm going to type row names, except I'm going to type it after I have to get outside of that. Um, row names equals false. And I run that. It's not going to show me anything. If there wasn't already something out here, so I'm going to delete that so that you can see. Um, so I'm saving it to this folder. I'm going to open this folder and you can watch it appears. There it is. So now I've got it saved, and that's the data we're going to use for the very first thing we do in Lab 2. Suggestion I will make to you is instead of saving things in a folder called data, create a new folder called my data, your name data, whatever you want to put it. So I'm going to save this. So, I made Tom's Labs. Now I'm making Tom's data. The reason I'm suggesting this is it will avoid conflicts between whatever data you save and the data I provide you. So I did that. It saved it here. Um, that is it for this time. Lab 2 is posted both the instructions and a video, so you can go through that, get everything caught up if you had not completed Lab 2 in class, and then we'll be ready for Lab 3 next week. And remember, office hours Wednesday afternoons, and I can set up online office hours on Fridays as long as you give me a day or two notice, just to make sure I have availability. All right, that's it for today. Thanks.